absolutely thrilled to invite my guest in. My guest today is Melisa Keenan. Welcome, Melisa.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
I know we've had a little whirl about trying to get this together because Melissa's a busy mom and an incredibly successful business person. So it's always a balancing act as we prioritize. I'm just going to do a little reading bio of Melisa, and then we're going to get right on into it. So just a little bit about Melisa. She is a keynote speaker, international and USA Today bestselling author. Melissa is the go-to intuitive intimacy expert for the top 1%. She helps business owners have more confidence, connection, ease, and trust in their personal relationships through mastery of intimacy and masculine and feminine energy. So more than 4 years, she's as coached and certified master of the Gibson Banning method. Melisa is a true expert on healing broken and strained relationships, starting with her own. Oh boy. So let's get right on into this. I know that right now you have a group that you're working with on this work because you feel called really to support leaders, in particular women leaders who are committed to Melisa, to bridging the gap, not seeing like being successful as like either or, like either they're really good moms or they're really good business leaders. And we're talking business in any shape or form, head of a PTO, head of a corporation, entrepreneur, any way. Leadership encompasses all things. A woman on a passion, on a purpose, and how they bridge that gap. And I see you, Melisa, as the bridge in so many different ways. Could you tell me what really drove you to this position of leadership and women, and how we can, bring those two together in a way that's really powerful, particularly in this time?
I think I have danced in so many different worlds in my honestly short life. I'm 35, but I've danced in so many of the different worlds. I was a stay-at-home mom for 9 years, and before beginning my business and really like launching into this, but got a bachelor degree, was planning on being a career woman, didn't want children before I got married. Like, so it's been this like dichotomy of like who am I meant to be, and seeing so many models of what success was supposed to be, and then delving into that and not feeling happy or fulfilled still, until I realized no, it's like everybody's only got a part in piece, and I get to bring it all together in my own unique way and stand in my truth of who I am, so that I can have joy in my marriage, so that I can have joy as a mother, and so that I can have joy as a leader in the world and actually serve and make a difference, which means everything to me. And so I think because I navigated all of that, ultimately my husband and I really went through some major challenges all through our 20s. We got married when I was 20, he was 22. So what were we even doing? We were babies, thinking that we had it all figured out, and obviously we didn't. And we both really spent most of our 20s in addiction recovery programs. like just barely limping along while also popping out 4 children.
Amazing. Gosh, that is an incredible situation. Well, this is nuts to me because you got to tell me how you went from I don't want children to having 4, because I think that that is a big shift for a lot of women, because a lot of women are on that fence of saying, I want children, I don't want children, but you were pretty adamant that you did not. What was that bridge for you into the desire, the knowingness that you were here to be a mom?
I think two things. One was when I realized where that came from. So a listener might hear this, and I just speak it with all tenderness and compassion. Usually when we don't want children, it's because we're trying to guard our heart from some pain. I experienced a stupid childhood that was full of pain and abuse, and my parents divorced and adultery and all the things that you can imagine, addiction. It was just awful. And I didn't want to repeat that, and I certainly didn't want to be held responsible for somebody else's heart and somebody else's difficult experience in life. I just didn't feel good enough. And so
Mm.
when I recognize that, I mean, I'm a little bit like, oh, bring it on. Like,
What's that for?
but
Wow.
but the other piece too was realizing maybe my family didn't have the tools that I can have, that I can access. Like maybe, maybe it wasn't just like all family is bad and a source of pain. Maybe I actually can access a different experience. And in the beginning, what that meant was like intense control and perfectionism, unfortunately, and you see that a lot. Where you have some dysfunction, and then the person who comes out of that who doesn't repeat it actually becomes totally like hyper anxious, high performing, like crazy, right? That was me. And so that created a lot of unhappiness. I was like, wait a second, I'm doing everything the opposite of what my family did. And so like, what am I supposed to be doing here? But ultimately, because we had so much difficulty, it broke me down and really opened me up to going, wait, there's a new way, there's a different way. I think I really looked to so many of the experts about how to do life, and I realized that actually was damaging to me. What I needed were experts that could guide me to the wisdom in me so I could live my life, my purpose, my way.
So what would you recommend to the listeners in regards to that? Because I think that so much of what we are encouraged to do is look outside ourselves to find the answers. And yet you really found your deeper wisdom by doing the opposite. And I think that it's interesting with COVID, we were all put in a timeout, you know, in a way, and we were for many cases, forced into being home in relationships that were broken, and starting honestly with the brokenness, that the relationship that we had with ourselves, that we were no longer able to run away metaphorically and physically. So what is the process would you recommend for the viewers and listeners in regards to how do we start that process of going inward in an authentic way?
Yeah, it really begins, nobody likes this answer, but it really begins with feeling your feelings. Like it's the beginning of everything. And a lot of people nowadays will say, "Oh yeah, I already do that. I know feelings, yada yada." But it's a matter of actually going into your body and feeling the feelings in your physical body, and then recognizing that the feelings actually aren't the end all be all. They're a guide that lead us to what we deeply value, what's deeply meaningful within us. That's why we have feelings. So often it's
Mhm.
like, well, I don't want to feel these feelings. They're uncomfortable to me. So we push them away. But really, it's like, well, if I just go in and feel other side of that, like my purpose is there, my desires live there, everything that makes up like the DNA of my spirit. And so that's what it is. You feel your feelings, and then you start
Mhm.
asking yourself, what values are missing for me that have me feeling in these ways? Like what's missing in my circumstances right now that I need, that I'm calling in?
That is such a powerful answer, because we are somatic beings. We are human beings that our first response, even in any situation, is a somatic response. It's a feeling response. We feel it in the body, whether it's pain or pleasure, desire or fear, any of it is a somatic response. And there seems to be this body, talk about spiritual bypassing. It's like, what about somatic bypassing? It's a whole nother ball of wax. We can just make some terms up, can't we now, Melissa?
I love that. It's the truth though, because we feel like our body is the enemy, but it's actually like, and I think that's where your and I's message aligns and overlaps, because true intimacy means that I am in my body. I'm aware of the sensations. And I mean, I see it as like I was put on this planet with this body, which is the vessel that lets me know, oh, yep, right path. Oh, no, no, that one's not quite it. Oh, yep, there you go. You're doing good. Like, and it's not to say that, if you have disease, it means you're on the wrong path, not by any means, but it's to listen and go, my body's my friend. What is it trying to teach me? What is it mirroring for me? Like, how can can I grow using the messages from my body? And of course, then that pertains so much in business because it's like our spidey senses, like something's off. I need to pay attention. Or this excites me. We need to
Mm.
explore this. We need to create something around this, right? And then it shows up in our marriage where it's like, oh, wait a minute, actually, I don't want to be touched right now. Why? Let me dig deeper into that. Let me understand that. Or being able to say, oh, I love being touched in this way. I want more of that. Let's cultivate that. Like we need our bodies so much.
We really do. I couldn't agree more with that. And so what is the process then? So if we're looking at, and I think we've come from a generation, and even with all the work of Brene Brown talking about the power of vulnerability, it's a key. She really was transformational in the space. However, I also think that when a lot of people hear the word vulnerable, they're not comfortable with it. I love what my mentor coach describes it as assertive vulnerability. It's the power to speak our truth, to get our needs met, to say no, to say yes.
Mhm.
So what would you say to women who have been brought up that they have to protect themselves and guard themselves and they can achieve everything a man can and just go and do it and lean in? What do you say to those women who, in some ways, have been led astray and, as similar to men, have been led away from the soul of who they are through the body?
Right, away from themselves. That's just it. The first thing that I would say is it's not a matter of can you? We know you can. It's a matter of do you like the outcomes that it's creating in your life? We all, pretty much all of us in this day and age, because of the culture and because of the way that things are plunged into a system that is masculine energy oriented. And so we become more masculine energy heavy. And we just have to look at like, is my body liking this experience? Are my relationships liking this experience? Do I feel in harmony in myself? And do I like the outcomes? And for some people, that can create a ton of money. You might like one of the outcomes, but do you like all of the outcomes? And does it really bring fulfillment? And I think that a lot of people were asking themselves that. It started with COVID, right? And the great resignation is continuing. I think they said there was more resignations in 2022 than there were in 2021, which is
Mm.
crazy, which says that there was a big effect long term, like a domino of people going, wait, am I happy? Let me listen, let me pay attention. But the problem is we don't know how to put down our masculine lenses. So we may leave our corporate job and go start a business and run it just like we did everything in our corporate position.
Mm.
And so we don't know, we don't realize that there actually needs to be an energetic alignment, realignment within
Mm.
us. And what does that mean? So many people hear my message and they immediately run, especially because I'm girly girly, which is totally different than feminine energy. I like girly girly stuff just because I do. It
Right.
doesn't have to do with feminine energy. So people see that and think, well, I'm not girly girly, and she's probably going to tell me to like cut off some parts of my power in order to be in my feminine energy. And it's the opposite. What it is an invitation to go, what parts of myself have I cut off in order to compete and play in this game that
Mm.
actually are begging to come forward? So it's an
Mm.
invitation to bring forward parts of yourself that you felt no one else asked for, no one else wanted, and to just say, no, this is who I am. So take it
Mm.
or leave it, people, That's
Mm.
that's what we need. We need more women in our wholeness and connected to our souls.
What is that about the asking? That's a powerful image that we step up even though no one asked, because that requires a level of boldness. And in what ways do we step in that power as women, as in the feminine energy, Melissa?
Mm. Well, that one's a really deep one. I could go on a long we could go on for a long time about that, for a day probably. Because if you look anciently, even talking thousands of years, like women have been oppressed layer by layer by layer over thousands of years. So even things like deciding maybe I do like crystals. Maybe there is something to like some energy or, whatever. And I'm going to start incorporating crystals into my life. We feel a lot of inner resistance because in our DNA, back somewhere, someone was probably killed for using crystals. Or,
Mm,
you know what? I want to use more natural health. I'm going to start turning to herbs and things and paying more attention to my connection to the earth. Again, we're going to experience a ton of weird self-sabotage type behavior because somewhere in our DNA, someone was probably killed for using herbs. Like we're talking witch trials, we're talking all these things. Even many of even just our upbringing when it comes to religion and things like that. So when we start to tap into our inner wisdom and it starts to bring us into things like I'm going to pay more attention to my cycle. I'm going to give myself permission to be more restful on some weeks and then be more active on other weeks. But the world around us is like, what the hell are you doing?
no, step it
Right?
up. Step it up,
Right.
lady.
And
Right.
so we need women to come back into themselves and say, no, actually, this is how I schedule. If you want me to be highly productive, I will schedule it in these weeks. On these weeks, I'll do things like connect with, clients, or I'll do other things. On these weeks is when I'm in high productivity. We just need more of that. And
Mm,
it looks different for everyone. It doesn't always mean you're turning to crystals and some of these different things, but it's a matter of getting back into yourself and really asking, like, what parts of me have I pushed away and how can I reincorporate those?
mm. And so what other questions could we ask? What parts of me have I pushed away? Um,
Mm.
what other
One of my
ways could
favorite
we look at
questions.
it? Yeah.
I'll bring my clients in and I'll ask them, what have you believed it meant to be a good woman, in air quotes, good woman, like in from your parents, from your ancestry, from your upbringing, other like influential women in your life and in your experience, and even now. What have I believed? Because like I'll have we do crazy things as women, right? And we all kind of laugh it off and say, "Oh, that's women for you." Like spending 7 hours preparing a table because we're hosting and we have to have the table prepared exactly or whatever. It's like, where did you get that? And is it bringing you joy or not? Because if it's not, you shouldn't do it. Like, whoever told you that those are the things you have to do? So when you really like, I literally would encourage you to sit down and journal that. What have I believed it means to be a good woman? And similarly, we can bring an example in like the feminist kind of world as well. Well, it's like, well, I need to like, have it all, do it all. I need to be a very successful career woman, but I also need to make sure there's an amazing meal on the dinner on the dinner table every night, and I need to make sure my house is spotless and it's all up to me. And then we don't accept help, and we don't all of these things, right? It's we just need to ask ourselves, what have I believed? And I use the words good woman on purpose because what does that even mean? Who's giving you a badge right now? Like nobody. And so
No.
we get to now go, okay, well, now I am a woman. So what's in alignment for me as a woman? And what can I release? What can I let go of? And just following our pleasure is huge. That's the next question I would say is what brings me joy?
Mm-hmm.
And just do more and more of that. I call that your sacred path of pleasure. So it's like, what brings me joy? What brings me pleasure? What feels so good to me? What sensations do I want to follow? Where do I feel purposeful? Where do I feel fulfillment? All of those things will make us more and more who we're meant to be. Like if we want to chase productivity, that's our path to productivity because that's where you're in your zone, right? And it's like, oh, everything that I create is easy. It doesn't even feel like work because I just love it. That's what we
It's
need. That's what
right.
we want.
Right. So how do we, when we're looking at that, because I know that you're working on the bridge, in particular in the leadership space, into having this holistic, more beautiful holistic connection. The bridge is what? What is the bridge?
Mm, I love that question. For me, it comes back to intimacy in
Mm,
every possible way. It's
mm,
intimacy, and I'll define that as into me see.
Mm-hmm.
So it encompasses emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical, all the ways, right? We can experience intimacy with nature. We can experience intimacy with our clients. We can experience intimacy in our partnership. Like it is, and with our children, it's all encompassing. And for me, that's a huge gauge. Like I go into situations, and when I start to feel off, I'm sort of like, oh, am I putting up some barriers or walls here? And what would I need in order to feel safe enough to drop those in this scenario? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's just all about that deep connection. So it's the way I run my team and my company. Like they all feel so cared for and supported. And it's crazy because when they feel that and they feel that connection amongst each other and from me, they want to do a good job. They talk about my company as if it's their company, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then certainly that's the way I approach my marriage. It can be no other way. And the reality is, I talk to so many women who are like, I wish my husband felt like more than just a friend or a co-parent, or, we're living two separate lives. But we can only go as deep with someone as we're willing to go with ourselves. We can't expect someone to know our deepest feelings if we haven't allowed ourselves to know our deepest feelings. That is into me, see, just like we talked about at the beginning, feeling your feelings, knowing that, knowing yourself and being able to bring that forward. And so you can't see deeper into your husband either than you've been willing to see into yourself.
That's so true. Are you looking to learn more about high performance coaching with Kate McKay? Please go to the website at kate-mckay.com to learn more. So, what is the fear around intimacy for most people, would you say? Why are people so afraid of that?
Isn't it that the paradox of life? Like
Hmm.
we crave it so much. We want that deeper connection and to be seen and heard and cherished and known on such a deep level. And yet when people come in and want to be in our space, we're like, no, 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 no. And
Hmm.
it's because we've been hurt. It's so we carry so much trauma. Literally just for existing in this day and age, we carry trauma. We're all carrying financial trauma. I mean, if you just even think even 100 years ago, which is not very long, people were living on a tiny percentage of what we're living on today, supporting a whole entire family on one income that was so much smaller. So we're all carrying that financial trauma. We carry this collective large scale trauma. We just went through a worldwide pandemic. Whatever you think about that, no matter what side you fall on that, it was traumatic.
Right,
um,
exactly. Thank you.
political
Yes.
trauma, all of that. And then you go, oh, and also I've lived this many years on the earth, and I've had death and I've had abuse and I've had yada yada yada. It's like I have these sacred parts of me and they want to be known so badly, but I will not bring them out until I know it's safe. And the problem is we don't, when we even have safety, we've created a beautiful marriage, we've created a beautiful business and environment, and we're still like, but is it safe? I have to guard it. I have to guard it. And that's
Yes.
where we get to go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe,
Right.
maybe I'm the gatekeeper here.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I have a question for you because I actually had this conversation with this guy the other night, and it was so interesting where he's like in his mid 30s. And he's like, well, I just think with guys, like they just should wait because, then they have it figured out and they sow all their oats and like whatever the theory was. And I was like, wow, I don't know if that's true because you know what? A lot of times people, when you get married, you have to figure things out through this partnership. And I think generationally, Melissa, I'm interested in your take on this. That so many people like, oh, no, 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 I need to do my self work. I need to figure out who I am. And then thinking that all of a sudden they're going to have this big aha and then they're going to be ready. And I think ultimately what I've learned through, certainly through my journey, through the COVID thing and the work that I'm doing now is that at the same time, we need to be doing our social work, people, that we are never going to be perfectly ready for anything that life brings us. And life happens on the edges, and we're here for relationship. And
Yep.
that means relationship with self, relationship with others, relationship with your spiritual center. And what is in the way of you stepping in and living more courageously? As we said earlier, courageous, not just being like hoo-ha, courageous is in the way of being real and living authentically. I just think that that's such a significant take. What's your take on the whole idea behind the marriage thing? Like, I need to be ready to be in a relationship. I'm working on myself, and I was married to a narcissist, or this. You hear it all the time. This narcissist, and I'm sure there's plenty of people with mental health issues. There, that's obvious, but it seems to be the buzzword.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's tremendous merit. And I say, it's so courageous to give yourself time and do that self exploration and actually do some past digging. Like that is needed, right? And therapy provides a great space for that, a space to go and look at the past and go, where did I potentially contribute to this? Where did I not see the red flags? Like all of that kind of stuff, and heal. And there's no right amount of time for any given person. I think that's what's challenging, is you need to decide within, like, okay, now I would say it's based on when it starts to feel like the right next step, when it starts to feel good
Yeah.
and expansive to you within. So create that trust within again, especially if you've been in an abusive relationship. Recreate that link with your own trust, whether it's just baby steps of like, I said I was going to do this and then I did it. And then I said I was
Oh,
going to do that and then
that's
I did it.
good. I like that.
Right?
So you're saying trust as in doing what you said you were going to do. So honoring
For
yourself,
yourself, only
honoring your
for
commitment
yourself.
to
Yes, yes,
yourself.
for yourself.
Man, that's a good one. You
Yep.
guys write that one down. Zing, zing, the boom. It's
And
why do you
then,
promise,
you're
right?
100% spot on when it comes to people waiting for eternity. And the thing about this is we're guarding our hearts. And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and been like, I did that. I waited. I was in such a good place. I was like on fire as a single person. I was like feeling so good every morning. I would go out and ride my bike on the beach and yada, yada, right? Now I'm in a relationship and every morning I wake up with trauma. Like, what the
Right.
hell, right? I thought I healed all that stuff. The thing is you can't heal it all before you get into another relationship,
Nah,
because
you
you're
cannot.
not going to have
Say
the
it
same.
again, Melissa.
Yeah,
Say it again.
you
Believe
can't
that.
heal everything before you get into your next relationship. You
Not
can't.
ever.
Never.
That's
Because
not
you're
my
not
life
going to have the
either.
same mirrored experiences. So then you get in a relationship and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that was very similar to something that was scary in my past. How do I handle that? What does it mean? How do I navigate these new situations? I even worked with a couple, it was her fourth marriage, his second marriage. And so it was very like they dated and lived together even for 9 years before deciding to actually get married. So
Mm,
careful, right? And
right.
and like total respect to her, right? 4 marriages. It's like, okay, I get it. And when she got married, she's like, I feel like I'm going crazy. Something about the actual commitment piece. They had already lived together, tied their finances together. Everything was as if they were married. But when she actually got married, it was like, oh my gosh. And it was scary for her. And so we got to work through that so that she could, because she was like, I have cultivated and curated this marriage so carefully.
It
It
was
is my
totally
dream.
vetted.
Exactly. So then I supported her, in that capacity, and ultimately it was so so good, because sometimes what we do when we put that much pressure on ourselves, anytime we're putting that much pressure on ourselves, we're also putting that on our partner also.
Oh, hell yeah. We're putting that on our kids. We're putting that on God. We're putting that on nature. I just think that this is so important. And I believe we share this, but in the physical realm, we give away things and they're no longer ours. Unfortunately, that's not true in the spiritual and emotional realm. If we have self-hatred and self-loathing, that is something that's going to drip into everything we touch. So I believe it's not a convenience to heal. It's your responsibility, babes.
Yeah.
And I've been stumbling through it. But I'm realizing now I got to be way more transparent and be in the hot mess. I am a beautiful hot mess. It's okay to be a hot mess. because you're
Mhm.
beautiful in it.
I
Ah,
call it messy majestic.
yeah, I love being messy, majestic. I'm all right with it.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So I want to talk about sexuality just because this isn't, you and I were touching on this earlier before we hit record, but I have this sense, and I loved your path on it because I know you journeyed to it through your marriage, and different sort of take obviously than me, but I always felt that sexuality and sensuality was a sacred thing. Even I don't know why, but I came into the world feeling as though I knew my power as a woman. Maybe it's because I'm a Leo girl, but I always knew that I had the power and the light to light people up. When I came into a room or when I was in an intimate relationship, I just felt like I owned that. And I never also understood that, like, I felt like I was the lucky one because I'm built to receive. We are built as sacred beings to be the receptor. And that means we don't have to do anything. We just get to be the receiver of good because we are the ones that provide that as women. You know, we birth through it, and we make love through that beautiful energy source. I'm just curious, how did you come into your sacred sexuality space in your life?
I love that question. Thank you for holding such a space where we can actually talk about that. Truthfully, I struggled so much. And you used a key word that I really realized. I'd say probably two major things, but one was receiving. Like, it's so uncomfortable. So again, everything we've talked about, you've plunged into a masculine do world. Everything
Mm,
is, your value is focused on what you do.
mm,
And we're just asked to be and asked to receive in our sex, in our sexuality. We're just asked to hold space and be the vessel. And it drives us mad. We don't know how to do it. And it doesn't feel safe. We don't know how to receive. I had to actually actively expand my capacity to receive. And I do
mhm,
that with my clients. We call it expanding your feminine container. And I can
mm.
see it energetically. And sometimes when I look at people, it's like little teeny tiny circles. Like, I have this much capacity to receive right
Yes.
here in my
Yeah.
shoulder, or right, I
Right.
don't have very much capacity to receive. So we merge all that, we
Beautiful.
expand all
Mhm.
that until we can hold it all. And it really is sacred because it becomes like a God space, right? Like, when I think of God, I think, okay, to be able to see all the pain and all the beauty and just be with all of that, like, that's actually what we're invited into as women
Yes.
on the planet today. Like, that's our
Mm,
heaven on earth, is to just be with it all and be
mm.
okay. And so that was massive for me, and honestly it's still a practice because I wake up every morning in the same world that you wake up in every morning, in the same world, right, that tells me what you produce is what matters most. And so that's challenging. There's nothing about receiving in that.
No, exactly.
But I'll
None.
tell you what, too, it's so tied to our capacity to receive money and
Mhm,
abundance and good things, blessings, all of it, right? So
mhm.
so that piece for me was huge. And then, ultimately I had to really look at, I personally didn't have sexual trauma in my, maybe a few things might have counted as that, but not really. But I responded to everything sexual as if I had experienced sexual trauma. And I took me years to see that. And what I ultimately realized was I carried the sexual trauma of my mother, of, like, as
Yes.
if it was mine. I had to just start looking at it
Yes.
and healing it as if it was mine.
Yes.
And then all my ancestors. I mean,
Mhm.
my grandma, her husband, so my beloved grandpa. I never actually met my grandma, but I have a collection of about 50 letters that she wrote during the 5-year period when my grandpa had an affair on her,
Mm,
ultimately brought my step grandmother in to take care of her on her deathbed.
mm,
Like, this is in my ancestry, right? So doesn't it
mm.
make sense that I would be like, men are evil, men are bad. I'm going to like, guard, I'm going to compete, I'm going
Mm,
to, all the things. Even with my husband, I used to be like, I'm strong enough. Like, no, I don't, why were you going to help me? I can do stuff, like all the
mhm.
things. And so really healing that and actually recognizing how much I was craving the rest to be held in the masculine, all of that, and then going, I get to choose who I allow into my space, and there is safe masculine out there. Um,
Absolutely.
Huge, huge journey with that. But what's
Mm,
been so cool as I have healed that in myself, I've seen it ripple back in my ancestors, living ones and dead ones, because I speak with like my past ancestors. But
yes.
like even my living ancestors, like I see them accessing
Mhm.
healing, even though we don't talk about it. It's
Mm.
like we do that when we choose to heal. It affects 7 generations back and
Yes,
certainly
it
seven
does.
generations forward.
Yes, it does. That's so beautiful. And so, what would you say to women who, oh my gosh, are listening to this and they're horrified because they just can't imagine, and yet in their hearts, and men too, in their hearts, they long to open that part of them and celebrate it. What would you say?
First step of all is compassion towards self. What does that even mean? I was so far removed from this and removed from myself that when people would say self-love, I would get so angry. Like, what the crap does that even mean?
Mhm.
I don't know how to do that. But when recognizing when I'm scared, when any of these feelings come up, and approaching myself with compassion. Like, I love
Mm,
you. I'm willing to feel these feelings. I'm willing to totally accept you, and you didn't do anything wrong. And
mm.
there's actually a really interesting, actually just have started studying this and learning about this, but there's an interesting correlation between something being unfair and disgust. And we process those the same in our brain. So when something is unfair, like we were hurt in some way, we were wronged in some way, it also feels like disgust to us.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
typically, what we do, because we don't feel like we have permission to express our disgust, women are never supposed to be angry, right? We don't have permission to express our disgust. We immediately turn it inward.
Mhm.
And so many layers of that, right? Of just like, oh, like this was wrong to me and it had to be my fault. We just do that over and over. So it's just the beginning is to go, oh, wait, I'm feeling something. And for once in my life, I'm not going to be like, you idiot, why are you feeling that way? I'm just going to like be like, wow, this is a big feeling and it's okay that I'm feeling this. And then do that layer by layer by layer by layer.
It's so good. I learned this as I was coaching men because it seems like women have cornered the market on the word self-care. And really, when we hear self-care, it's like, oh, you're going to get a mani-pedi or something like that, right? It's just something that's just like, oh yeah, we're in self-care and going out and hang out with girls for wine night or something. But I think there's a couple other words that are equally important when we're talking about the self. And one of them is obviously self-respect. And I love that when you talk about compassion and this gesture of just holding your heart. And the other one is self honor. If we were to decide to own that process of self honor and self respect, that makes me feel a different way when I use that word. Because self care seems kind of amorphous, right? But what does it mean if we self honor and self respect ourselves? I mean, when something is unjust, we usually feel like we've been disrespected and we have to act angry or we have to project it in, just like you said. And I just think that's a beautiful way, the way you described it, the self compassion as being the portal to great things.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always hope in these things, and it feels so taboo and so scary to face. But I help client after client like heal from these things and actually experience not just like safety and beauty and comfort and support around sex, but also like play and fun and adventure
Yes.
and all of that. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is a whole thing that I cut myself off to
Right.
because I had hurt and I didn't know that I could heal it, right? So that's
Mm.
what's available. That's what's on the other side of this.
Yeah, playfulness. I
Yes.
think we yearn for that. We yearn for just to be playful, that sexuality is messy, sensuality is messy, and it's silly, and it's crazy, and it's wild, and it's all these parts of us, and being seen physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually from all angles, and angles you cannot control. It's disconcerting. And I think that's the disservice of pornography, for a lot of women, and men. And to be honest, this
Yeah.
causes a lot of intimacy problems from that. I know a lot of people do use it in their marriages and such, in the relationships, but there's also the darker side of that, which is, what side are we seeing? What side are we feeling required to show our best angles? Well, intimacy isn't about that. It's our worst
Absolutely.
angles too. What we perceive to be our least attractive angles.
Yep, exactly. I always hear these body image issues, and I always know they're a surface problem. Like
Mm,
they always are. And whether that's even sometimes, your partner will actually express to you dislike about some part of your body, that's a them issue.
oh, yeah.
It's not actually about you, and it's not actually the thing that's preventing them from desiring you, or yada yada. Like it's never actually about that. It's an illusion, because our bodies are built first for function. First for function, second for looks, right?
Yeah, amen. True story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. And what would you say to a woman or a man listening, how to tap into the pleasure of their sexual self?
That's such a good question. It depends on where you are in your journey. Um, because everybody is kind of starting at a different starting point. But
Yes.
the beginning is really just paying attention to what brings you joy. Like at
Mm,
the simplest, like, starting point, it's just like, what brings me joy? Write a joy list
mhm,
and just notice what are the things that really light me up, that really excite me. And then you can go deeper with that. You could start paying attention to your sensations. That is the definition of sensuality, is being alive to your sensations. I know you talk about that. And so like, why do I enjoy this food so much? What is it
mm,
about it? The taste, the texture, etc. The being, smelling, hearing, going out in nature so you can experience more of your senses. Those are great ways to just start to tap into that. And then having the discussion with your partner around some of those things, like what sensations you enjoy, what sensations you don't enjoy. And also noticing, like, that's why it's so important to pay attention to like what brings you joy too, beyond just physical. Because for some people, your turn on is not even indicated by physical. Like physical comes last. For some people,
exactly.
physical comes first. There's a great body of work out there called The Erotic Blueprints, by Jaya, and she's on Netflix now and everywhere. Really great body of work that helps people kind of identify. It's almost like the love languages, except by Gary Chapman, but except for it's your turn on language.
Mhm,
And so that's a great resource, because it starts to open you up to like, oh, wait a second, there's a reason. Like most women take 40 minutes on average to actually start to feel turned on and like
mhm,
really open and receptive for sex. And who says that? Nobody even knows that. You can shorten that amount of time, but it starts first by accepting it and understanding it, and
mhm.
understanding, well, wait, what is it that I'm craving then? I think the one that really stumps people is, Because for some, it's like maybe we hear a little bit of conversation around how women want more emotional connection before they can physically connect. That's actually a stereotype. I've worked with plenty of men who want more emotional connection before they physically connect as well. So it's like
True.
kind of, it's a crapshoot which thing you resonate most with. But what we really don't hear about is the energetic part. It's like a spiritual connection. And if you're not open and you think, oh, all that stuff is woo woo, and you've been raised in that way, but actually that's the only thing that's going to turn you on, like,
Mhm.
you have some exploring to do, or potentially that's your language. But your partner, or particularly your husband, may be like, the cowboy type, and like you want to meditate or something, you want
Right. Well, how do you
tantra.
get it right? So you have to know what it is for you and get in that space so you
Exactly.
can be in the position of receptivity and not expect other people to bring you in there, or to be a mind reader or a heart reader or a
Yeah.
soul reader of your inner longing.
Yeah. But it's so hard. It's so hard to even get to that point because sexuality is such a hush hush topic, we carry tremendous shame. We just think, well, I'm supposed to work like I've seen on porn or on movies. I'm supposed to just work when called upon, or even when I want to, and I don't. And so why? And then there's something wrong with me, and then we go into this shame spiral. If we can lift the shame and kind of set it to the side and just go, oh, okay, this is my body, this is me, and I'm going to try to get to know it. I'm just going to try to get to know it. And sometimes we have to do that multiple times in our life. Like menopause for women is a huge period of time where it's like, it's all different now. I got to re-get to know myself, and just approach it with curiosity without judgment. It's massive. Then it's so much fun, I'm a shapeshifter. So I kind of can go to all the things, emotional, physical, spiritual, all the things. And it's so much fun. My husband and I will have transcendental meditation during sex sometimes. He could care less about it, but I love it. And so he'll do it with me. We'll like project ourselves over to like an island on Maui, a beach on Maui, or whatever, or whatever we want, right? Where but sometimes kink is more what we want, and so we incorporate those things. But you have to create the safety first, and so that's
Mm.
why the majority of my work is focused around some of the other layers of intimacy. I feel like if you have the emotional safety, spiritual safety, mental safety, and intimacy in those ways, it's very easy to then explore the physical intimacy together and discover what you like together. You don't ever have to bring in porn. You don't ever have to bring in some of these other resources if you don't want to.
I love that. That's really beautiful. And the physical just becomes the least, I won't say it's the least of it, but it's sort of like, oh, and here we are.
Like the
And that's
cherry
where I
on
think it
top.
becomes a lot more
Exactly.
fun, right?
Yep.
Just to be able to be more in this place of acceptance and receptivity on both fronts. That's so powerful. So I would love it if you would share just where people can find you and what are the ways that people can, play with you and understand your work more at a deeper level so they know, how to connect with you, obviously.
Absolutely. So I've got a free intimacy guide. So if you go to my website www.melisakeenan.com, that will actually take you through some of the steps we've talked about on this call: feelings, values, and being able to come up with a statement and share that with someone else. It's a really beautiful practice of intimacy with self, and then potentially an invitation to intimacy with another. And so that's great. And that brings you into my email community as well. And then I also run a free Facebook group for women called Women Manifesting Intimacy. And it's full of women leaders who also care a lot about bringing in their relationships and their spirituality and approaching their life and leadership from a place of wholeness.
Mm.
So Women Manifesting Intimacy, you can go search that up on Facebook.
So good. And so you have a hybrid program too, as well, of like individual coaching and group coaching as well. So people can, which I love that idea of people being able to do that one-on-one and then also in a group setting. So they're in the evolution of the self and the social work, which is a powerful combination, actually.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
The Authentic Feminine is that program. So focus on eliminating what we've been told it means to be a good woman and just really focusing on what feels true and authentic, bringing forward our own true nature, our divinity in all aspects of our life.
So good. So, what would you like to say to the viewers and listeners, just as in parting? What do you want them to know, Melissa?
I would just love to reiterate something that we've said before, which is the most important work any of us can do today is to look to the parts of ourselves that we haven't made space for and make space for those parts that you've judged, that you've said, that's ugly. If people saw that, they wouldn't love me. I don't even love that part of me. And fiercely love it. Do whatever you can to fiercely love it and bring it forward and incorporate it and stand in that, because we need more leaders who are willing to just stand in their truth. That's what our new world is made up of.
It's true. And the most authentic, productive people are going to be the ones that will thrive. So I want to thank you for showing up and doing the work that you're doing in the world, particularly as we speak on leadership and authenticity. Just the fact that you're 35, I forgot that. And just how much you carry in wisdom, soul wisdom is truly a gift for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you to all of you listening. I appreciate you. And until next time, be sure you reach in to your authentic self, into those places you fear. You deserve that level of self-care, self-respect, and self-honor on this day and all days moving forward. Take good care. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Master Your Life. If you enjoyed this episode, please like this and share it so that you can get notices for the next episode, releasing every week.